Welcome to the Intern Whisperer Live, the show all about the future of work and working with interns. So coming up on this episode of the Intern Whisperer Live is Shantera Chatman. She is our guest, and we are really excited about her being here. She's all the way over there in Texas. So this is going to be a great show. Today, we are going to be, aside from looking at that, we're going to go over our social plugs. So people, you can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on all 6 of the big podcast channels. So it's iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and Podbean. And we welcome you to come and play our game. You can go to internpursuit.games and play that. Exciting news is our game has been accepted onto Steam, so start looking for us to have presence there. And you can also go to internpursuit.games on Facebook and Intern Pursuit and like us and follow us and check out the really great content that we're putting out there. The game is also on Twitter, and you can watch us live on Intern Pursuit on Facebook. Today, not so much. We're not going to be doing that. So our first patron is Starter Studio. It is a nonprofit organization and a pioneering hub for innovative and tech-enabled entrepreneurs that empowers and provides resources for entrepreneurs, creatives, and innovators to begin, grow, and flourish in Florida. Starter Studio fosters a community, serving as a platform for the ideas of the future. Thank you, Starter Studio, for being a patron of the Intern Whisperer. In our Intern Pursuit news, students, do you want to work with one of our great employers or with Intern Pursuit? Go to internpursuit.tech to sign up and create your profile. And employers of all sizes and types are invited to be part of our early adopter beta pilot. You can use this code, Intern Pursuit Beta, to sign up for special pricing. Contact us at info@internpursuit for more.tech for more information. And again, if you want to play our game, go to internpursuit.games to check it out. Welcome, Shantera, to the Intern Whisperer Live. We are really excited to have you as a guest on our show.
Thank you for having me.
So we met way back at North Carolina when we went to the Women Empower X conference, and you had a booth over there. Mm-hmm. And you were there for 2 things. I know you were there for your nonprofit, but also for your business, your consulting business. But I'm going to give our listeners a little bit of a bio so they know more about you.
Okay.
You're a transformational consultant with experience in organizational change management, project management, process improvements, and transition management. You have over 20 years of experience in the aerospace and oil and gas industries. And you have a reputation for building strong relationships with clients and delivering quality results. But what I find really interesting is that you worked at the Johnson Space Center. So I'm looking forward to hearing what that was like. And you also have an annual conference that you put on. And you have a nonprofit that you started called Chapman Women's Foundation to provide scholarships and grants to women building businesses and getting back into school or even getting out of shelters. That is so cool. So let's hear those entrepreneur stories on both sides. But really, that whole Space Coast thing, that's super interesting.
A lot of people like the fact that I have NASA stories.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I get a lot of clients because of that too, because they think I'm really smart.
Yeah, you are smart. You had to be smart. You got there.
Yeah, I did, and stayed there for 13 years.
Wow. That is really amazing. My dad worked at Lockheed Martin, and we never got to have the NASA visit, but we did get a tour of Lockheed and Martin, and it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, and Lockheed Martin is really cool. Boeing is really cool, but then you get to go, if you ever have an opportunity, wherever you are, ever have an opportunity to go to one of the space campuses, I would definitely suggest going, because it's still mind-blowing even today, even when I go and think about the things that I was able to do and the people I met. And when I was there, I actually worked with the Japanese space program. So I actually went to see their mission controls center in Japan. And so not too many people can say that. Not too many people can say that they wrote requirements for the Japanese Space Agency's Mission Control Center. I can say that.
Oh my goodness, that is impressive. Well, I am in Orlando, Florida, and this is really awful to admit. I've been to the NASA Space Center for sure.
Hmm.
I've taken a tour of it, but I've never gone over when they've had a launch. And I've seen it from, Orlando. You can always see it when it takes off in the skies here. But my dad worked for Boeing also, so he's been in that aerospace industry for a long time. Weapons is what he worked on. Weapons
Okay.
of mass destruction. I
All
found that
right.
interesting. That's what I said, what do you do? And he told me that. And I went, oh, okay. But anyway, really interesting about that whole opportunity that you had to go and visit in Japan. I never even realized, I guess, that I know that they have it in Korea, but I just don't think I realized that it was even in Japan too. And it seems like we should know that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's all of the partners, all of the NASA partners um, kind of still flow through Johnson Space Center, flow through Houston, flow through America. So a lot of times when they're building their control centers, and especially when I was there, they were building their control centers. They were calling us, asking um, what was some of the best practices, what are the things they need to do. So we were kind of mentoring the other space programs. And of course, as you think about it now with the space station, we are not the hub. The others are the hubs, like the Russians in different places. And so, everyone has to still be connected and have to still be on the same page and all of that. So yeah, everywhere there's a space program, we're traveling, or someone from here or there traveling back and forth, making sure
So
everything's
that's
taken care of.
interesting. They have goodwill between the countries. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a collaborative thing, not a competitive thing
Yeah,
then.
it's definitely collaborative. When I was working there, and actually I was a little nervous because I was fairly young, and being told that I was going to be a part of the crew that was going to work with the Japanese. So that was one thing. It was a lot of teleconferencing, a lot of phone calls, but then it was time for us to go there. So what they would typically do to kind of share the budget and to share the pain is one time the team would come to America and the next time America would go there, just to kind of make sure that it's evened out, that everybody's kind of sharing the wealth of the bills of
Hmm.
traveling and working together. And so I was very nervous about that, not knowing what the relationship was. And to my team, they were like, no, no, it's nowhere near what people make it out to be. We work in the control center, they work in their control center, we have a bond. And it was actually very nice. They party a lot more than I thought. And
Oh, really?
yeah, and so I was kind of the prude. I went through Japanese culture training here in the States. So when I went there, I would understand, how things work. But it was difficult, and I think most of the people at the Johnson Space Center here in Houston were nervous about me going, not so much because I was young, but because I didn't drink.
Oh, wow.
And in Japan, they that's how they network over drinks and over sake, and you go and you hang out, and they really did not know if I was going to offend our Japanese counterparts. So it was just a matter of, we're just going to send her and hope for the best. And it
Wow.
really wasn't a bad thing at all. They like to, I guess, get inebriated so they can ask each other questions, so they can learn more about each other and not feel like they're being interrogated. But I
Yeah,
told
they
them,
are a very formal culture, right?
yes, until it's time to party.
I see. I did not know that. That is
And so
interesting.
I did not know a lot about, eating raw fish and sushi at that time. I mean, I was maybe 27 when I was going there. And
Mhm.
so there was a lot of discussion with me about, would I be able to handle them asking me questions? And I told them, sure, I didn't have a problem with it, as long as they didn't have a problem with me asking them questions. And so we had this kind of open dialogue about why I decided to be married. I was young and I was married to a man that could take care of me. I mean, there was all of these culture conversations, and then there was money conversations, and then there was, why don't you drink? But I was open with them. And so that meant that they respected me for being open and honest. And I didn't have a problem at all. As a matter of fact, when I rolled off of that contract to go work with someone else within the same NASA umbrella, they complained, they protested and didn't want me to leave. So I guess I impressed them and they were happy with me.
That's a compliment.
And then
That is
actually
awesome.
they told me that my NASA bosses said they'd never had a situation where the Japanese actually requested someone, and they requested me.
That is a real compliment. So kudos to you. That is a nice story to tell too, because I would imagine, at the time frame, I have no idea how old you are, but I just know that, it's always, we did a show 2 weeks ago, it was about women, the climb, just the climb for Women's History Month.
Hmm.
And we interviewed several women, different ethnicities, different races. It really is all about how challenging it is for just women in general, but then when you throw women of color in it, it's even harder. And so we had real very candid conversations, and I was so grateful for the guests that shared that, because it is a very hard thing for women, because they'll choose a man over just about every position that's out there, and that is a huge compliment for all of women. So thanks for representing there, but also just for you personally, I cannot imagine anything more thrilling, to be honest.
I think at the time I didn't know the impact, and I guess I wasn't thinking of it in those frames until after I came back and heard from other people about
Yeah.
it. Because I knew it was a big deal, one, sending a woman, two,
Yeah.
sending a young Black woman, and then she
Yes.
doesn't drink and she's married to a military man. We really were literally a month or two after September 11th. So people were just
Wow.
starting to travel again. And so I remember I was terrified because I didn't know what was going to happen. I was terrified, but I was able to purchase a round trip airfare to Japan nonstop for $300.
Oh
That's
my
how
goodness,
bad it
that's
was.
unheard of.
That's because of, no one was traveling and everyone
Wow.
was scared, and my plane was still very empty. So, during that time, I was concerned with so many other things, like, am I going to make it?
Yeah.
But by the time I came home, I realized, wow, that's a big deal.
It's a big
For me,
milestone. Sure
yeah,
is.
for me to have gone, for me to be that young, for them to have accepted me and embraced me the way they did, not just culturally, out socially, but even in the office. We were told you can tell the hierarchy in the room by the most important person sits in the middle.
Hmm.
And then it goes out from there, especially with the Japanese. And they're like, hey, let them sit first so you can see the order and you sit on the other side of the table. Well, and the women stood, their culture was women, you let the men have the seat for you. And so there were ladies standing in the back, Japanese women, and there was not enough seats for me. And the room was empty. And actually the IT director, he was the big guy in the room. He was sitting in the middle. He made someone move and asked me to come sit next to him in the meeting.
Oh my goodness.
And
This just gets better and better. I
and
really like this
everyone,
story.
and everyone just froze. And I was also told, if they invite you to sit with them, you definitely go. Don't be offended. So I went and sat next to him, and we sat there for like 3 hours during a meeting. And when it was over, everyone was like, "Oh my God." So, little things like that I remember, because I want to ensure that I don't forget that I may have opened the door for someone else without even
Yep.
thinking about it.
Yeah, that is really, really a cool story. I like that very, very much. So the other thing that
Mhm.
I wanted to find out is, why did you start your business? Which ones did you start first? Why the nonprofit? All of those good things. I'm sure
The
our
non
listeners would enjoy hearing that.
Yes, the nonprofit started first. When I was working at NASA, and I was working for a consulting firm, like you said, that your father worked for, um, Lockheed Martin and Boeing. I worked for Booz Allen Hamilton,
Oh, I
and
know that
so
company.
yeah, we were the IT consultants of choice here in Houston for Johnson Space Center. So I worked there. And my company wanted to be able to support in the community. So I was tasked with trying to figure out who to support. And so I found this women's shelter not very far from where our office was, and we began supporting them. And for some reason, I just started to be drawn to them. And I started my nonprofit literally based on the needs that were going on in that women's shelter. I went there and I started to teach assertiveness once a week after work. And then they asked me if I could do something else, if I could do something on a weekend where they could invite their friends and family, because they truly enjoyed me and how I was just open to them and not made them and did not make them feel like they were less than, didn't make them think about their mistakes and things of that nature. And so that's where the Chapman Women's Foundation started almost 11 years ago now. And I started working there with them, and it just started to kind of snowball. It wasn't just about women in a shelter anymore. It became about all women. It became
Mhm.
about women in corporate America. It was women who were trying to build businesses, women, young women who are trying to finish school, or even older women who need to go back so they can get a better job. So that's where the Chapman Women's Foundation started. And initially, it definitely wasn't about giving money. I didn't start giving money until 6 years ago, where I wanted to be able to give scholarships and grants. So I said, hey, what if I gave a $700 scholarship? Or I found a company to sponsor a scholarship. And it just kind of went from there to where now we've given, I think, over $30,000 in scholarships to women who are trying to build businesses, or women who are trying to finish school, and definitely those ladies who are trying to get out of shelters. So that's where that started from.
My church, it sounds like micro loans, and my church does something where they go third world countries, though, and we work with Esperanza, a nonprofit that also shares Christ, and then they help give little loans to the people that are in that community. It was in Dominican Republic,
Mhm.
and there was always accountability there. And that certainly, I bet, because you've got this consulting background, that's really where you began to also help them have that business experience that they needed.
Yes, the one thing that I try to tell the ladies is, yes, this is a grant, this is a scholarship. You don't have to pay it back. However, the way you will be paying it back to me or paying it forward is you're going to be meeting with me. So once a quarter, they are obligated to meet with me. I need to see results. I
Right.
need to see what's happening. I want to see grades. I want to see what the business plan looks like. If you're opening a bakery, let's talk about it. What are we doing? What's your next step? Where have you gone so far? I want to ensure that they know that it's not just about a handout, that I'm trying to provide this leg up to them. And yes, they know that I have a consulting firm of my own now, which I didn't have a few years ago. My consulting firm is only 3 years old, but as I built who I was, and as I started to understand how to run a business, of course, that meant that I knew how to ask questions, and I knew how to ensure that those ladies who said that they were going to start a business, that they had all of their ducks in a row. So I started requiring counseling from, I had different banks and other firms who provide financial counseling, who provide business consulting and coaching. I started making some of those things mandatory if I could get the service provider to provide it for very, very discounted rate or even for free. And so those ladies realized at that point, okay, this is serious. I don't need to apply for this unless I'm really serious about it. And that goes for, the colleges and even the ladies in shelters. I only work with shelters who have outreach programs that show the successes of those ladies that have gone through their shelter and have started to do well.
That's really, really good stuff there. So, when you chose shelters, I know this wasn't a question I prepared you for, but why do you have a heart for helping the women in the shelters? Because I know that, goodness, I have a heart for homelessness and for those that are living in poverty for, my own reasons, and leukemia. My mom had leukemia. But I definitely have a heart for helping women also. But is there a personal reason that you would share, or is there a
No,
story behind it?
when I started to volunteer at the women's shelter, I just felt like there was a need there. I
Mm.
don't have a personal story about being in a shelter or anything like that. We didn't grow up with a lot of money, but we didn't live in shelters or anything. I just feel like I was blessed with um, huge, wonderful female role models.
Mhm.
And even though we didn't have a lot or we struggled, there was always my mom there that I could look to see that she's still doing it. She's still trying to make it. She's still working. And I realized that a lot of women don't have that, especially those women who are in shelters because they've had to leave their homes. They've had to leave what they're, accustomed to. And I just wanted to be able to help. And when I was working at that women's shelter, I just felt like I was helping. I
Mhm.
felt like those ladies needed something. And honestly, the first time I heard a woman come to me, had a woman, she came to me and she gave me a hug and said, I got a job today. First job she'd had in like 3 or 4 years. She said, I have a job today because you helped me, because you helped me to prepare for the interview. You showed me how to shake hands. You showed me how to give proper eye contact. And that's what made me get this job. That to me was like, oh, wow, this is great.
So rewarding, so
I wanted
personally
to be able to help.
rewarding.
Yeah,
I
I
don't know.
wanted to.
Did you like tear up? I think I would have been tearing up then.
I teared up after I got home. So when
Really?
because she was crying when she was hugging me. And I
Mhm.
was like, no, it wasn't me. It was you. She was like, no, you don't understand. It was you. And, on and on and on. And when I got home and I was trying to explain it to my husband, then I teared up. And he was like, oh boy, this is about to start something.
Mhm. Mm, that is really good. But you know what I realized? I don't think you shared the name of your nonprofit. What is it?
Oh, the Chapman Women's Foundation.
Okay, there. You know what? Maybe you did, but it's good to say it a second time.
Yes.
Definitely
And
good.
my consulting firm is Pow Her Consulting.
POW is in like POW and then HER, right?
Yes, Pow
Yeah.
Her.
Yeah. So how did you pick that name?
Oh, the name actually came from my women's foundation.
Hmm.
We were, I would say, maybe 4 or 5 years in, trying to figure out a way to keep everybody excited about what we were doing, mostly kind of marketing. And I was trying to figure out a word. I was like, what kind of words can we use to keep people excited? And Pow Her just kind of came to us. Maybe I'd heard it somewhere. I don't know. But we were playing with it. And I was like, okay, let's use Pow Her because I don't really like girl power that much. I was like, no, we're not girls. We're,
No, we're
we're,
grown women.
yeah. And so I started using Pow Her as a kind of a symbol of saying that women can do what they want whenever they want, and we are going to empower her to do it.
Hmm.
And so that became the thing in Houston. Every time people would see me, they'd be like, "That's the Power Her lady."
That's cool.
And so I said, well, you know what? I'm going to, make sure that, part of me and even the things that I do as a speaker and a consultant and an author, all of that still, there's that underlying foundation that I started with my women's foundation. So I wanted to still kind of pay homage to the foundation, even with my consulting firm.
Yeah, I think well, first, we already know that's a great business move, right? Because businesses that align themselves with a social cause or with a nonprofit, they always really do resonate with their audience more because it's not all about just making money. And the fact that you give, many grants and many type of scholarships there, many as in MINI, just for our listeners.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that says a lot about who you are as a business person, but also as a woman and how you're supporting the women in that community. So that's a really good story. It also will resonate, as I said, to many, I'm sure, of potential customers that you could have.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they gravitate to that when they're talking to me about the company, even when they're talking to me about coming in and doing consulting work or speaking, they want to know about the foundation. So it's always there. It's always a
Hmm.
part of everything that I do. And sometimes I can find new donors through my business, which is great. And, or just fans of what I do, which is also a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those differentiations that you can certainly leverage to your benefit, and both sides of the table there, because many people do not really realize that nonprofits are a real business. They're exempt from having to pay sales tax, but they are a true business. Many times people don't know this also. If a nonprofit is closing its doors, it has to give everything it has. It doesn't go to the founder or whoever created it. It has to be donated to another nonprofit. That's
Hmm.
important information there to share. So you don't take you as in collective you. A person should not take starting a nonprofit lightly. It is a very weighty responsibility, because you really have to do quite a bit of fundraising. And people that say they don't like sales, fundraising is sales.
It's hard. It's a lot of hard, especially when the economy is bad. Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Then, that's the first thing that gets cut
yeah.
is, the community giving. And so then you have to ask yourself, then what is it that we need to do? What is it that we can do?
Hmm.
And so that's those are the pieces where the rubber hits the road for a lot of nonprofit owners. The one good piece of advice I was given by a friend was to let people know that I have an MBA.
Hmm.
She said, you need to, even when you're talking about your nonprofit, because for a long time, I didn't tell people I had an MBA. I didn't sign with it. It wasn't on my signature line and my emails or anything. And she said, you need to put it there because a lot of people assume if you have a nonprofit that you just kind of did it. It was a social thing for you and it's not a true business. And it kind of helps to legitimize you and it gives you more credit. And oddly enough, once I started to utilize the MBA credential and my signature and things like that, I did get a lot more phone calls. I did get a lot of meetings that I wasn't getting in the past from banks and things of that nature. And she said that she knew for sure that there were several banks in the Houston area and several donors that just don't know. They assume that people who work for nonprofits or have their own, they're not actually educated. And this was a while ago, but it still, kind of resonates with me.
I can totally relate to what you're saying there. My background is in education. I was a public classroom teacher, but
Hmm.
I went back to school and got an MBA also, and I use those credentials on my signature block. It's made a really big difference for me to be able to cross over from education into the business world. And I always have one foot in there, but I have a certificate in nonprofit management, and I've worked in that industry from when I was a classroom teacher
Hmm.
to working with like the Nature Conservancy. I was a grants administrator there for 2 years. And then I worked for the Center for Independent Living, and then also for my own college that I graduated from, Rollins College here in Orlando, or Winter Park, really. But I understand that nonprofit side really well. And that's a benefit when you understand for-profit business, nonprofit, and that brings extra value to that MBA. I have found that to be true in my own consulting business. So I'm in that HR space, like you're in organizational development. I'm in that training and learning side of it,
Hmm.
and all but dissertation for a PhD in leadership with a specialization in human resource development. So you and I have very, very similar backgrounds. And that was when I met you, that was one of the things that I found really interesting. And where I had said, hey, I'd like to have you as a guest on my show, just because of the similarities we had in our background. Just so you
Yeah.
know, I don't think I even expressed that. It was like a crazy, crazy thing over there in North Carolina at that Women Empower X event, but it was really a good event. And I met some really nice women, really nice
Yeah, it was really great. And I see
women.
that they, expanded and they're doing good things in every city that they go into. So,
Oh my goodness, yeah, yeah. And she's been a guest on the show also. That was back in the quarter 4 of last year,
mhm.
but anyway, good stuff there. So how has business changed for you as, you're the head of your company and a nonprofit since our COVID-19 pandemic? Because everything is topsy-turvy. I know we touched on that,
Mhm.
before we had our call today, like, is it still business? And everything I do is pretty much remote. With my own teams, we use Google Hangouts, of course, and we also use Skype quite a bit, but we're moving over into Zoom and doing some other things and putting that presence out there. for clients. And so how has this changed for you?
So for the nonprofit, it hasn't had much of an impact, or at least I haven't felt it yet, simply because this is during the time that I'm usually in motivation mode for
Hmm.
me. So I'm doing a lot of outreach and reaching out and, just really ensuring that the ladies that we support or that I've met throughout this time, that they're motivated, that they feel like they can continue to move forward, asking if they need any resources, things of that nature. So from that standpoint, I haven't had to face the nose for the nose for fundraising yet. I actually, the week before everything went on lockdown was what,
Yeah.
and that was what was it, International Women's Day. I actually hosted a woman's brunch, and it was a huge, huge success. And then right after that, everything went crazy. So I
Mm.
was able to get one of my larger events for for Q1 out the door before all of the craziness happened. So I'm so grateful for that. Now, on the other side of the house, with my consulting business, that you can imagine, I've had lots of clients say we need to halt
Yeah.
halt work. We're working from home, or we're halting things. I actually had one very large client that I was working with that ended the contract the same week. They were like, "We're going to just cut the strings." And so it makes for somewhat of a stressful time, but I'm very happy because I'd been working already on an online platform for some of the things that I do. I'd written a book right at the end of last year, and it's entitled The Transformative Ally Framework, Going from Advocacy Support to Coexistence. And so me and my curriculum writers, we've been working to create these guest lecture series. And so we've turned those into online delivery products. So that's been great that we were already kind of in that mind frame before all of this hit. So now we're just doing a lot of cleanup. We're able to spend a lot more time making sure the work is quality, and that we're able to use Zoom, and we are using Zoom, able to use all of the different portions of it to make sure that it's just as interactive as if they were face to face with me and things
Oh,
of that
that's
nature.
awesome.
So we're super excited about it. We're
Mm.
excited about being able to add that to our repertoire, but there's also the part that says you need to pivot a little bit and listen to what people need right now. And what I was getting calls for was introductory to Zoom classes. So I actually just completed a on-demand Zoom 101 basics course that I'm going to put out for a lot of the educators, so they're able to get accustomed to using Zoom to teaching the students online.
Mm, that's true, because all of the schools are, Zoom was smart. They put out a great email saying, hey, we're going to open this up for all of the schools across the country, and really had to ramp up quite a bit. But they seem to be able to be keeping up with it. Fortunately, they were a company that had scaled ahead of time, and
Hmm.
they, are prepared for it. But man, this is the time where everybody is scrambling. Even those that have online presence are feeling that, oh my gosh, everything you read is always about COVID-19, coronavirus. Now the stimulus economic packages that they're putting out. And so apply, get those applications in, because that $10,000 grant is, huge for a small business.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And so I was receiving tons of emails yesterday about the Paycheck Protection Program and some of the other pieces of it. And so I'm going to be speaking with my bank tomorrow about all of it and saying, hey, what do we need to do? Because quite frankly, you do lose. And I definitely lost a lot when my
I did.
largest client walked away
Yep.
as soon as all of this hit. So I would love to be able to recoup some of that if possible.
Yep. I know I did. I had all types of, I was working on getting ready to work on 3 business plans and do some on-site training in Louisiana, and everything stopped right then.
Mhm.
And it's probably a good thing in some ways, because where I would have been going, there was quite a bit of the outbreak
Yeah,
in Louisiana. So they said, oh, no, this is really a good thing. You should be considering yourself favored. God protected you. And I
definitely.
I believe that.
Yeah, everything is for, happens for a reason. And so I haven't really stressed myself out about any of it. I think that first day or two, I was found myself in my head a lot. And I said, no, this is all going to, this is going to work itself out the way it's supposed to. You're going to be
Hmm.
where you're supposed to be. And
Exactly.
I'm just going with it. And thankful that I did have unpaid invoices that are being paid
Hmm.
and it's just keeping everything moving.
Hmm. I I agree. I totally agree with you. So, what remote working tips do you have to share with our listeners?
Hmm.
And it was great. You just gave a little promo there for Zoom, and I'm switching over to Zoom also, so I'm learning it.
Yes, yes. But I would say, the first thing is have a routine. I think when people say that if they've been working in an office forever and all of a sudden start working from home, it's um it becomes really easy to sleep in every day and to just kind of hang out and, oh, I'll get to it when I get to it. Those kind of, things because you're at home or
Hmm.
you're with your kids more.
Hmm.
But put together a routine. Not saying that you have to put on your suit and tie and come sit in your office. I know some people do that, but have a routine where you know what time you're going to wake up. If you need to work out in the morning, still work out in the mornings. Spend the time, schedule the time with your family, and make it something that's repeatable throughout the week. It just
Hmm.
makes it easier time working from home, and also not to overthink it and not get in your head about it. I think during this time, because there's a pandemic, and every time you turn on TV, whether it's CNN, ABC, whatever, all you hear is pandemic, COVID-19. But try not to overthink it. Really, just go with it. You can't change it. You can't fix it, but you can control how you respond to what's going on around you. So following the rules and all of that. And the last thing I would say is if you have a team member or several team members that you know are already shy, that they were people that you kind of had to nudge to get them to speak up in face-to-face meetings, you're going to have to do your homework to get them to speak up in online meetings
Oh my
and over the
goodness.
phone.
You are so preaching, so on target there. Yeah, I could not agree more.
Because you
So,
just having to be prepared to advocate for those people who are you're quiet, checking in with them
mhm.
more often, those kind of things.
Yep, yep. I had to run out to the store and just those day-to-day routines that one has. I went up to Walmart and I could not believe how many people were wearing face masks. So even though, we're talking about remote working tips, it's still evident in the retail stores because God bless those people. They're there to help, make sure that we have some semblance of what
Hmm.
is considered a normal life. Our new norm is not is this is the new norm. But it was really the customers in the store that were wearing gloves and also the face masks. The people that were there was one checkout person. Everything else was on self checkout, but she had on gloves also, and everybody was very respectful of the 6 foot space.
Hmm.
So I noticed that right off the bat, whether you're in line or if you were trying to get somebody's attention to come and help you in an aisle with something, 6 foot space was observed. So that as a working environment, I think it speaks a lot to hopefully how the businesses are trying to make sure that their own employees are safe because those are working tips. There are the essential employees that are there to serve us, whether it's a gas station, grocery stores, Walmart. And it's important to remember that there are people out there and they they feel maybe a little uncomfortable. They have to feel safe.
And these are lives. It's people's lives. So it's not a game. It's not something that can't happen to anyone. I was speaking with a colleague today, and she actually works at a shelter. And she said, this is so weird for us that we're working from home, but we have all of these clients. I said, your people actually live on site. You have to
Yeah, how are
account for
they?
that.
That's an interesting question. What are they doing with the women that in the families that are in shelters? Because how do they keep them safe?
So they're one, the staff is working in shifts. So there's only maybe one person there working on the campus at a time to ensure administratively that things are going the way it's supposed to. I think they have closed down intake at this particular shelter. And it's more of a private shelter that, you know, kind of a little bit fancier. All of their the ladies that live there
Hmm.
actually live in their own little cottages because they're privately funded by
Oh,
some
so
of
it's
the.
not like a group shelter
No,
like bunks and stuff like that.
no, 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 no. So they have a main home where they have several that live in that house, and I think they've had to kind of institute different rules because there are several families. I think their main house has four families can live in it.
Hmm.
And they're the smaller bungalows where, you know, outside of the home, outside of the main house, that just one family per bungalow. So I think they've had to institute rules in the house about the per families. But she says it's been very difficult to do because they're not all able to be there together, and they only have one kitchen in that main home for all
Mm.
four families. So she says it's really been a struggle, but the ladies that live there have been just open to every idea that they've had about keeping everyone safe. No one has been angry. And she says that's what's gone a long way, is that people are just trying to figure it out with them.
Yeah, that's huge. I had also read about how the prisons were having immense amounts of problems. So they had let go of anybody that was like a minor, a minor type of an infraction, a misdemeanor, and just to be able to give more breathing space inside of the prison system.
Yeah,
And those are people too that we don't think about that are at work and they are there every day. So working remote is not an option. It's
and
really
police
something to think
officers,
about.
and you know, police officers, and all of those people who are constantly in contact.
Firemen.
I saw an interview with the governor of California, and he was mentioning just that thing about prisoners, and he was saying that they are looking at who they could let out of prison. And he said, but just to be clear, we're looking at those who are already up for parole. We're looking at those who are going to be up for parole in the next 6 months, and maybe we can fast track their parole to get them out of here. And he
Mm-hmm.
says he's put new rules in place for what is an arrestable offense right now.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, if it's nonviolent and non predatory and drug related, then you have to ask yourself a certain amount of questions to know whether or not you should actually um, arrest them and bring them in.
I know it kind of goes back to like what people said, on the lockdowns on the cities. They said, okay, you'll get a fine and then you could be put in jail. I said, I doubt that's even likely, because they'll give a fine to people that are working people, but I doubt they're going to put them there. I think I was always thinking about the homeless, what do they do with those people? Because I know I would stay late at my office. And then when the curfew hit at 11 o'clock, I went, what are all of these police? Because I hadn't heard that. I was deep into the work mode, and it was about 10:30 when I left. And I was driving home, and then I saw all of these police out in the street in the downtown Orlando area. And that's when I found out about the curfew, and the only people on the street were homeless. But the eerie thing was when I would walk from the office, when they had closed down even the bars and the restaurants, I would walk from my office to the parking garage. I went, did the rapture happen? Because I'm not supposed to be here. And there is nobody around me. There were no cars in the parking lot. There was nothing there. And it was just really an eerie feeling in a city that's always got, a heartbeat to it, so to speak.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the same here in Houston. It's just
Yeah.
empty.
Well, we're going to take a little break. I'm going to go and give a shout out to our next patron, and then we're going to come back and be wrapping up our show.
Okay.
Omnimodal helps smart cities connect all commuters across all modes of transportation move into the future. Omnimodal. Their website is omnimodal.io. Thank you, Omnimodal, for being a patron of the Intern Whisperer Live. So we're coming back to our show. It's all about internships and remembering that person that gave us a chance. I know this kind of falls into like what we were talking about previously, but what do you think the future of consulting looks like 10 to 20 years from now? It's just really a short summary here. I know that I've so enjoyed chatting with you, to be honest. We're going to talk about what a typical day would look like for somebody, an intern, to work remotely with you now. And then some of the mentors that gave you some great great mentoring and any tips that you would like to pass on. So what do you think the future of consulting looks like?
I think the future of consulting is going to be a lot more of this remote work. I think
Mm-hmm.
it looks more like innovation and thought leadership rather than staff augmentation. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of times people use the word consultant. That means you just have another body in the office. I think it's going to be a little bit more than that because it's now going to be important to provide that bang for your buck because it's going to
Mm-hmm.
take a while for this country to kind of bail itself out. So the future of consulting is really going to be around innovation, and it's going to be about finding the best way to communicate and get your message out that doesn't look like the next person's.
I could not agree with you more. And the world of automations and how that is stacking up into how to run a business, especially if you're an independent consultant like yourself and myself, having as many of those automations in place is going to be vital. But innovation as into how you're doing business now, certainly you sat there and went, okay, I'm going to put together a Zoom 101 basic, and that's going to be a huge asset to any of the people that are in your own type of your leads list, so to speak, but the people that you're talking with, your own following. And then you also mentioned before we got started on the show that you have a podcast and you're getting ready to gear that up. And I can tell that your podcast would be amazing. You're going to have really great tips in there. And what's the name of your podcast, though? Also,
The name of the podcast is Empowering You.
oh, excellent.
And so that was named after the book that I was promoting when I met you in North Carolina, Empowering You, Tips to Finding Your Voice. So during that podcast, I talk with people, I share tips on when I lost my voice and how I was able to regain it, what that looks like, what it feels like, and what those next steps are.
Mhm.
How do you get back?
Now, just for our listeners, you're not literally meaning that you lost your voice, but it was about finding who you were. Let's just
Yes.
clarify.
Yes, it's not about literally losing my voice, the sound of it. It was who I was and
Mm.
getting lost in
Reconnecting.
corporate America.
Yeah, that whole reconnection. And I don't think, I think this is something that's interesting is that many times when I talk with women, we're always trying to figure out who we are, and we doubt ourselves. But I've seen, a lot of, the younger generations because I work with them in my own company, but it's one of the things that I teach employers is how to be a mentor that leads and leads across a multi-generational workforce for sure. That's going to be vital. Um, what I think is consistent, and I don't think that people realize it, is that we all get in that place because we hit a decade and it's like, okay, it's time to reinvent. And if you get too stuck into being who you were in the past, you're not able to move forward into the future. Would you agree?
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think honestly that it was my problem. It was that it was time for me to move forward and not stay in the same place, but I didn't know how to do it. I put
Yeah.
myself in a box and it was up to me to get myself out of it. And I think that's what really that underlying message is to a lot of women when I speak to women. It's get yourself out of the box. Don't even put yourself in it. Kick
Mm-hmm.
it out of the way if it's there
Mm-hmm.
and move forward and allow yourself to grow based on circumstances that are coming your way because as life changes, so do we.
Yes, yeah. And one of the things I was speaking at a conference before all of this happened also, and it was at the National Aviation Conference here in Orlando.
Hmm.
Um, and one of the things that I said is there is one thing we all have in common as humans, and that is we will all get older. So it does not matter. You will not escape that. And we should be kind to every generation behind and ahead of us and remember that. It really resonated with somebody in the audience, and they reached out to me on LinkedIn and they said, oh my God, I could not agree with you more. And I'm supposed to be having an appointment with them. But it is true. And it is really important to remember that as we go through that aging process, whether you're 20 or you're 27, as you were when you went to Japan, or when you're in your 70s or 80s, there is always something that we have to contribute. Being part of it requires that we be innovative and we not get stuck in the past.
Right.
Yeah, could not agree more. So, what would a typical day look like for an intern to work with you in your business? I bet it's remote.
It's definitely remote, mostly because even before all of this, there really I didn't have a need to have someone sitting with me,
Hmm.
but I've always had a need to have someone working with me and keeping me focused on, the big picture. So even when it was, I needed an assistant versus your questions about an intern, I still didn't need you here. And so I think for me, a day in the life with me is one to start working and going through emails first and foremost. That's kind of my first thing, is to make sure that I'm caught up and I know what my day needs to look like. But then I want to strategize about new business. I want to strategize about innovative ways that I could get out to new audiences. And
Hmm.
so an intern for me would be someone who is an out of the box thinker, because sometimes I'm very much someone that's structured in the way I think. I may get to the out of the box thought, but it may be a little further down the road. And so to have someone that works with me on strategy about new clients, about things that I need to say to appeal to a new audience. Those are things that I really would love to work with an intern on, especially someone who may be younger than me, because they can tell me all of the new things that I may not be thinking about, leading into the discussion about what's coming for me. What things can I do even for that's on my calendar? All of these different speaking engagements and client things that I have on the calendar. What are some things that I can do to kind of spice it up? What are some
Hmm.
things I can do to make them never forget me and always want to be my raving fan, and be someone who stays with either um, Power Consulting, or even goes all across the aisle and wants to be a donator, a to the foundation, or a sponsor of what we're doing on that side of the house.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep,
So
I
there's a lot
agree.
of strategy. There's a lot of strategy discussions, because that's constantly what I'm doing. I'm whiteboarding. I am thinking about, new ways and new things that I could be doing. So there's always this future outlook thing that I'm doing each and every day. So it's not just about the client calls and the emails. It's about the strategy for the future.
I agree. One of the things that I say to somebody that's going to intern with me, I go, if you tell me that you can take something off my shoulders, you're going to be like the best secret weapon I have. And if you're not afraid to manage up, because I have a lot of irons in the fire, and
Hmm.
I really need people that are very proactive and communicate at a really high level, because we're all moving super fast, but you still have to communicate.
Right, right. You still have to tell me. And there are times that I'm probably not going to agree, but that doesn't mean that I hate you.
Yeah,
It means that we just
yeah,
need to figure out the right thing for the business.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I was teaching, the kids would say, "Oh, you don't like me," and I went, "No, no, let's make sure." And we have to say this. It doesn't matter where they are in life. It's a good reminder, whether it's your significant other, your parents, or you know complete strangers or people you work with. Listen, I'm going to get angry. I'm a human. You'll get angry. You're a human. So it doesn't mean we don't like each other. It just means we have to come together and find a consensus of a place of agreement. So we will disagree, and that's going to be okay. The important thing is that we don't keep it bottled up inside of us.
Right.
Yep, could not agree more. So, who are some of your mentors that you might want to recognize? Great advice that they gave you, and it sounds like you're a wealth of really great advice. You've been sharing so many good mentoring tips. It's amazing. So, who were some of those people for you?
Oh, I have a couple of guys that actually people are surprised that a lot of the mentors that I've had that have been great have been men. But when I first started at Booz Allen Hamilton, I worked for someone. His name is Doug, and he mentored me in a way that I don't think he realized that he was. I found it valuable, but even to this day, when I talk to him, because I still do talk to him, we talk about how he's made an impact on my career and my life. He just says it's amazing that that was something that I just naturally do. I naturally want to make sure that you're okay. I naturally want to come in and check in with you after a meeting to make sure you understood every word that was mentioned. Because when I started at NASA at 23 years old, one of the youngest people that they really brought in to work in an environment like that really quickly. And um, Doug would come back and talk to me after each meeting to make sure I understood the implications of the things that were said in the room, that I understood the language, because there's so many acronyms,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. And even when it came time for me to just kind of make life decisions, Doug was always there. And so he's been just a invaluable source of mentoring for me my entire career. And then there was another gentleman at Booz Allen. He was a senior vice president, and he just provided so much business advice to me. So Doug was very much about me growing as a professional, but Reggie, he gave me the real deal business discussion. And I worked in an environment where there were not a lot of women, and there definitely were not a lot of women of color. And my Booz Allen Hamilton office here in Houston, I was the only minority that worked there for almost my entire 13 years that I was with the company. So he would counsel me a lot on the things that I was hearing, explaining to me how I needed to take up for myself or say things the right way, how to assert myself,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it came time to negotiate salaries and things of
Mm-hmm.
that nature. So those two, for my career, brought me all the way to this point, and I'm blessed that I'm still able to call on them when I need to. Now, beyond that, there's always been my mom, who's just been there, has been the one role model in my entire life to be able to be someone that she's proud of now, because she just worked. She just worked, and there was not a lot of time to stop and whine about the situation. It was, I have a family. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to do it. So
Mm-hmm.
to me, I learned that I just need to stick to it. Situation is definitely not where it was then. I'm grateful that I'm able to take care of her now, but it's just that whole thing of, she mentored me without having to say a word. I watched it. I watched how she lived her life, and that has shown me so much about how I want to continue to live mine.
That's a really wonderful testimony about your mom too. Really nice. My mom passed away 4 years ago. Yeah, and I really miss her a lot. And yep, that was one of the things I did. I was able to share with her. My father is definitely still alive, but I shared this with both of my parents, that they did a fantastic job of raising me, and that they gave me the work ethic and many of the points that you just touched on. I mean, they made me somebody that can take care of themselves, that is resilient, that is a really hard worker, and I'm very, very thankful for that. So that's a wonderful testimony to share there. So, how can our listeners contact you? Is share your websites, social channels you're on, if there's an email or a phone
Yes.
number you want to share?
Sure, sure. So, to find out more about the Chapman Women's Foundation, ChapmanWomen'sFoundation.org is the website, CHATMAN, womensfoundation.org. All of the information, all of the people who we've supported, some information is out there. And then for me and what I've been doing with my consulting business, ShanteraChatman.com. So my name is really,
That's the brand.
that's the brand. Yeah,
Yeah.
ShanteraChatman.com, and Instagram is Shantera Chatman. Twitter reversed it, and so it's Chatman Shantera.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so email, honest. I think that it would be great if someone, heard something that they wanted to reach out and get more information. I do respond to emails, so info@shanterachatman.com would be a great
Hmm.
email for them.
That is cool. You mean there's more than one Shantera Chatman, which is why you had to reverse it on Twitter?
I think so. There's more
That's
than
amazing. That there is only one unique person there, and that is you.
That's me. And
Yeah.
we put it in, and they did not allow us to have Shantera Chatman. They came back with Chatman Shantera. So I said, okay.
Okay. Well, that's the way it was then.
Right.
Well, anyway, right here at the end of our show, we usually do shout outs. So, who would you like to give a shout out to?
A shout out. Can it be anybody?
It can be anybody, living, dead, people you know personally, people you don't know. I mean, you can go up to 3, so feel
Okay.
free.
So one other person that I didn't mention in this, and it's odd that I haven't mentioned my husband in this. So shout out to my husband, Pierre Chapman, who kind of sitting with me in this whole pandemic era right now, and probably wanting to run out of here kicking and screaming for being with me for so long every day, but being the support that I need and allowing me to be me completely. But and also first responders, also doctors, nurses, teachers right now, janitors,
Grocery
any
stores. Oh my
grocery
goodness.
store workers, and even those, and then the ones that really we don't think about, the people who are still working at FedEx and Amazon and all of those places
Mhm,
that are assuring we still get our packages and get all
mhm.
the things that we need, those warehouse workers.
US mail.
I want to, yeah, yeah, all of that stuff. Yeah, the U.S. mail, and even honestly, and even to the politicians who are trying to figure this whole thing out and to try to figure out how to keep this country moving. A
Yeah.
huge, huge shout out.
Yep. And to all of those around the world, we're all in this. This is something that is hopefully unifying us as a as a group of people around the world, just the whole
Yeah,
planet.
Spain,
Yeah.
Italy, UK, Russia,
Yeah.
all of us are all in it together.
Well, my shout out goes to you first for being a guest. To all of our listeners, we always appreciate them. And then to my own team, they have been awesome and
Mm,
they have really helped rally together. And this is the first time I'm doing this show by myself. So usually I have somebody that sits across the table from me and somebody that sits next to me, and we have the video people in the room, and none of that's happening. But it is happening behind the scenes, and so we're still doing stuff, and it's just the way that we're having to work right now.
you're
But
getting
it's
out of your box.
yeah, getting out of the box. Anyway, well, thank you so much for being a guest. I'm going to let our listeners know how to contact us. So you can contact us at info@internpursuit.tech. Our office number is 321-422-2166. Visit our website, internpursuit.tech, and be sure to follow us on all of our social channels. Oh, and a little shout out. We are having a contest between the 4 interns to see who is going to be the next Intern Pursuit influencers. So we are putting our content out there. They have learned some amazing little tricks. They're putting awareness tips, how to work remotely, awareness tips about COVID-19. So anybody that is on our social feeds, you'll find one of them is in charge of every social channel, one for LinkedIn. Bernie is on Facebook, Sophia's on LinkedIn with me, and we have Sal on Twitter, and then we have Laura on Instagram. But everybody is posting on Instagram, and we're wanting to see who will be that next Intern Pursuit influencer. So share our content, make comments for April and for May. That's how long our contest takes place. We're going to be posting weekly analytics, just so you can see who's in the lead, and hopefully you're really going to love what we're sharing out there. That's what we want more than anything. So to all of our listeners, we want to say thank you for listening, and stay safe and stay healthy.